The sky was eerily quiet as the first alien ship descended. It wasn't like the movies where there were blinding lights or deafening roars. Instead, it was calm. Too calm. The massive vessel hovered above New York City, its metallic surface gleaming under the afternoon sun. People on the street stopped what they were doing, their necks craning upward in awe and confusion. Some took out their phones to record the event, while others simply stood frozen, unsure of what to do next. Hi. Above the Earth, aboard the alien mothership, Cale observed the scene with detached curiosity. He was a tall, angular figure with skin that shimmered faintly, like liquid metal catching the light. His eyes glowed a soft blue, scanning the monitors displaying images of the planet below. To him, this mission was straightforward. Humanity had been studied for decades by the Varnak Collective, and every report indicated the same thing. Humans were weak, divided, and easily controlled. This belief filled Cale with confidence. What could possibly go wrong? Back on Earth, Ryan Carter sat on the porch of his cabin deep in the woods. He lived miles away from any major city, preferring solitude over the chaos of urban life. His wife, Sarah, joined him, holding 2 cups of coffee. She handed one to Ryan before sitting down beside him. Neither spoke at first, they didn't need to. They both felt it, the strange stillness in the air. Something was off. "Did you hear about those ships?" Sarah asked finally, breaking the silence. Her voice was steady, but her hands trembled slightly as she sipped her coffee. Ryan nodded. "Yeah, I saw it on the news earlier. Big deal, right? Probably just some government experiment gone wrong." Sarah frowned. "You really think so? It doesn't feel like that. Look at how everyone's acting." She gestured toward the small group of neighbors gathered near the edge of their property. A few families had come seeking safety after hearing rumors of strange activity in nearby towns. No one knew exactly what was happening, but fear spread faster than facts. As if on cue, a loud hum filled the air. It started low, almost imperceptible, then grew louder until it vibrated through the ground beneath their feet. The sound came from the direction of the nearest town, though no one could see anything yet. Ryan stood up abruptly, his coffee forgotten. He grabbed a pair of binoculars from inside the cabin and climbed onto the roof for a better view. Through the lenses, he spotted something moving across the horizon. At first glance, it looked like birds, but these weren't birds. They were drones, sleek and silent, scanning the landscape below. As they passed overhead, Ryan noticed red lights blinking along their undersides. Whatever they were looking for, they seemed determined to find it. "They're here," Ryan called out, to Sarah and the others. His tone carried a mix of urgency and resignation. "Get inside. Now." Everyone scrambled to follow his instructions. Inside the cabin, the atmosphere shifted. Fear hung heavy in the air, mingling with the smell of wood smoke from the fireplace. Children clung to their parents, and even the adults exchanged uneasy glances. No one knew what to expect, but they trusted Ryan. After all, he had served in the military before retiring to live off the grid. If anyone could keep them safe, it was him. Hours passed without incident. The drones disappeared as suddenly as they had arrived, leaving behind only questions. Just when people began to relax, however, a new message echoed through every device capable of receiving signals: televisions, radios, cell phones, even old transistor radios stored in basements. The voice speaking was cold and mechanical, devoid of emotion. To the inhabitants of Earth, it began. "We are the Varnak Collective. Your species has demonstrated an inability to manage your resources responsibly. We have come to restore balance. Surrender now, and we will spare your lives. Resist, and you will be eliminated." The transmission ended as abruptly as it began. For a moment, silence reigned. Then panic set in. Across the globe, people reacted in different ways. Some fled to bunkers or remote locations, hoping to avoid detection. Others barricaded themselves in homes or offices, praying it would be enough. Governments tried to respond, issuing statements urging calm and promising protection. But none of it mattered. The Varnock had already made their intentions clear. In the cabin, Ryan listened intently to the message, replaying it multiple times. On an old radio, his jaw tightened as he processed the words. When Sarah approached him, her face pale with worry, he shook his head. "They think we're weak," he muttered, more to himself than to her. "They don't know us." Sarah placed a hand on his shoulder. "What does that mean, Ryan? What are we supposed to do?" He turned to look at her, his expression hardening. "We survive. That's what humans do best. And if they want a fight, we'll give them one." Outside, night fell quickly, cloaking the world in darkness. The stars twinkled brightly, oblivious to the turmoil unfolding below. Somewhere in the distance, the faint glow of city lights flickered and dimmed as power grids failed. The Varnock had begun their assault, targeting key infrastructure to destabilize humanity. Cities plunged into chaos as communication networks collapsed and emergency services struggled to cope. But not everything was lost. Deep in the woods, far from the reach of the invaders' technology, Ryan and his small band of survivors prepared for what lay ahead. They rationed food, fortified the cabin, and scouted the surrounding area for supplies. Each person contributed in their own way. Emily Dawson, a wiry woman with grease-stained hands, worked tirelessly to modify old vehicles into makeshift weapons platforms. Jason Cole, a lanky teenager with a knack for electronics, tinkered with scavenged equipment trying to find a way to counteract the alien tech. Even the children helped, gathering firewood and keeping watch during the long nights. Despite the odds stacked against them, a sense of purpose began to take root among the group. They may have been ordinary people thrust into extraordinary circumstances, but they refused to give up. Ryan became their unofficial leader, his military experience guiding their efforts. He taught them basic survival skills, organized patrols, and planned contingencies for every possible scenario. Meanwhile, aboard the Varnock mothership, Cale monitored the situation with growing frustration. Reports poured in from the surface, detailing scattered resistance efforts. Most were minor annoyances, acts of sabotage or isolated skirmishes, but they hinted at a larger problem. Humans weren't behaving as expected. Instead of crumbling under pressure, many were fighting back with surprising tenacity. Sainara, Cale's second-in-command, entered the command center just as another update flashed across the main screen. She paused beside him, studying the data with a critical eye. "They're adapting faster than anticipated," she remarked, her voice tinged with concern. "Perhaps we underestimated them." Cale dismissed her comment with a wave of his hand. "Adaptation is irrelevant. Their attempts are futile. We hold all the advantages." Zinara hesitated, unsure whether to press the issue. She respected Cale, but his arrogance troubled her. Still, she chose to remain silent, for now. Only time would tell if his confidence was justified or misplaced. As dawn broke over the horizon, casting golden light across the forest canopy, Ryan stepped outside to survey the land. The air smelled crisp and clean, untouched by the destruction ravaging the cities. For a brief moment, he allowed himself to hope. Hope that humanity might rise to the challenge. Hope that they could prove the Varnock wrong. Little did he or Cale know the real battle was only beginning. The days following the Varnock's arrival felt like a blur. Cities around the world crumbled under the weight of the invasion. Power plants were disabled, water supplies contaminated, and communication networks reduced to static. The aliens moved, with precision, targeting critical infrastructure to cripple humanity's ability to resist. Yet despite their advanced technology and overwhelming force, they couldn't stamp out the spirit of defiance that burned in the hearts of those who refused to surrender. In the remote woods where Ryan Carter and his group had taken refuge, life became a delicate balancing act. Every decision mattered. Every move could mean the difference between survival and disaster. Supplies were limited, and danger lurked everywhere. But Ryan wasn't one to back down. He spent hours poring over maps, plotting routes to nearby towns where they might scavenge food, medicine, and tools. Each trip was risky, but staying put meant certain starvation. One morning, As the sun peeked through the trees, Ryan gathered the group outside the cabin. Emily Dawson stood beside him, wiping grease from her hands onto a rag. Jason Cole adjusted his glasses nervously, clutching a tablet he'd salvaged from an abandoned electronics store. Even Sarah joined them, her arms crossed tightly against the chill in the air. "All right," Ryan began, his voice firm but calm. "We need to hit the old hardware store on Route 12. There's bound to be stuff we can use, tools, batteries, maybe even some fuel if we're lucky." "What about the drones?" Linda Harper asked, her sharp eyes narrowing. She was a former school teacher turned sharpshooter, and she never missed an opportunity to point out potential threats. "They've been patrolling that area nonstop. We go in blind and we're dead." Ryan nodded. "That's why we're going at night. Jason says he's figured out how to jam their signals, at least for a little while. It won't last long, but it might give us enough time to grab what we need and get out." Jason shifted uncomfortably under the sudden attention. I'm pretty sure I can do it," he stammered. "But I haven't tested it yet." "You'll test it tonight," Ryan said firmly. "We don't have a choice." As dusk fell, the group set out cautiously. They traveled on foot, sticking to the shadows cast by the dense forest canopy. The air was thick with tension, every rustle of leaves or distant hum making them flinch. When they reached the edge of Route 12, Ryan signaled for everyone to stop. He crouched low, scanning the road ahead through a pair of binoculars. "There," he whispered, pointing toward a cluster of buildings. The hardware store sat at the far end, its windows boarded up and its sign faded from years of neglect. Hovering above it was a single drone, its red lights blinking steadily. "Okay, Jason," Ryan said quietly. "Do your thing." Jason swallowed, hard and fiddled with the device in his hands. It looked like a jumble of wires and circuits strapped to a small battery pack. After a few tense moments, he pressed a button. The drone's lights flickered, then went dark. Its rotors slowed, and it plummeted to the ground with a metallic clang. "Yes!" Jason exclaimed, unable to contain his excitement. Ryan shot him. A warning glare, and he quickly clamped his mouth shut. The group sprinted across the road, keeping low to avoid detection. Inside the hardware store, they worked quickly, stuffing backpacks with anything useful they could find. Tools, flashlights, duct tape, it all went into the pile. Emily found a stash of car parts tucked away in a corner and grinned triumphantly. "This will keep us rolling for weeks," she said, holding up a carburetor, but their luck ran out faster than expected. As they prepared to leave, a loud whirring sound filled the air. Another drone appeared, this one larger and more menacing than the last. Red beams scanned the building, locking onto their position almost instantly. "Move," Ryan shouted, shoving Jason toward the door. Bullets, no, energy blasts, ricocheted off the walls as they scrambled outside. Linda fired back with her rifle, hitting the drone squarely in its glowing core. It exploded in a burst of sparks, raining debris onto the street. They barely made it back to the safety of the woods before reinforcements arrived. Exhausted but alive, they collapsed onto the damp earth, catching their breath. "We got lucky," Ryan admitted later that night. "Sitting around the fire, too lucky. Next time we won't have that kind of margin for error." Emily nodded. "We need better weapons. Something that can take those things down without relying on luck." Jason raised his hand tentatively. "I think I might know how to build something. A portable EMP device. It would disable their tech temporarily, just like my signal jammer did earlier." Ryan studied him for a moment, then gave a curt nod. "Do it, but make it fast. We don't know how much time we have." While the resistance fighters worked tirelessly to adapt, the Varnock faced challenges of their own. Cale paced the command center of the mothership, frustration etched into his features. Reports of human attacks were coming in more frequently. Now, each one highlighting the same problem. Humans were proving harder to subdue than anticipated. "They're using primitive tactics," Sinara remarked, reviewing a holographic display of recent skirmishes. "Ambushes, sabotage, guerrilla warfare. It's effective because we weren't prepared for it." Cale stopped pacing and turned to face her. "Effective? They're pests, nothing more. Their actions are inconsequential compared to our overall objective. Zainara hesitated, choosing her words carefully. Perhaps, but even pests can cause significant damage if left unchecked. Shouldn't we consider altering our strategy? Kyle's expression hardened. Our strategy is sound. Humans are divided, disorganized. They lack unity. That is their greatest weakness. And ours may be arrogance, Zainara muttered under her breath, though not softly enough. Kyle heard her and glared, but she met his gaze unflinchingly. For a moment neither spoke. Then Kale dismissed her with a wave of his hand. Enough. Continue monitoring their movements. If necessary, deploy additional forces to suppress these nuisances. Days turned into weeks, and the resistance grew stronger. Word spread among survivors about Ryan's group and their successes. Other communities reached out, seeking guidance or offering support. One such group was led by Michael Hayes, a farmer whose knowledge of the land proved invaluable. His family owned acres of farmland tucked away in a valley, hidden from view, by rolling hills and thick forests. When Ryan and his team arrived at Michael's farm, they were greeted warmly. Chickens pecked at the dirt and rows of crops stretched as far as the eye could see. It was a stark contrast to the desolation they'd grown accustomed to. "You're doing good work here," Ryan said, shaking Michael's hand. "How have you managed to stay off their radar?" Michael smiled grimly. "We keep to ourselves. Don't use any tech that might attract attention. And we've got tunnels dug beneath the fields. If they ever come looking, we'll disappear before they even know we're here." Ryan nodded approvingly. "We could use allies like you. Together we might stand a chance." Over the next few days, the two groups merged their efforts. Michael shared information about secret routes and safe zones, while Ryan provided strategies for defending against alien patrols. With their combined resources, they launched a series of coordinated attacks on Varnock outposts, striking swiftly and retreating before reinforcements could arrive. Each victory, no matter how small, boosted morale. People began to believe that winning was possible. Stories of bravery and ingenuity spread, inspiring others to join the fight. Slowly but surely, the tide began to turn. Back aboard the mothership, cracks started to form within the Varnock ranks. Troops grew weary of constant skirmishes, their confidence shaken by the resilience of their opponents. Zainara watched silently as reports of failure piled up, her doubts growing stronger with each passing day. "It's time to reconsider," she finally told Kale during a private meeting. "Humans are not what we thought they were." Continuing, "Down this path will only lead to greater losses." Kyle slammed his fist against the console, his glowing eyes blazing with anger. "Are you questioning my leadership? My decisions?" "I'm questioning our assumptions," Zainara replied evenly. "If we want to succeed, we must adapt just as they have." For a long moment, Kyle said nothing. Then, reluctantly, he sighed. "Very well. Send a delegation to meet with their leaders. Offer terms for surrender. But mark my words, if this fails, there will be consequences." Zainara bowed her head, masking the unease twisting in her gut. She knew this concession came too late. Humanity had already proven itself unwilling to yield, and deep down she wondered if Kale's pride would ultimately doom them all. The meeting between humans and aliens was set to take place in a desolate stretch of desert, far from any city or settlement. It was neutral ground, chosen specifically because it lacked resources worth fighting over. Both sides agreed to come, unarmed, or so they claimed. Trust, however, was in short supply. Ryan Carter stood at the edge of the designated zone, his boots sinking slightly into the soft sand. The sun beat down mercilessly, turning the air hot and dry. He adjusted the strap of his rifle slung across his back, ignoring the sweat trickling down his face. Beside him were Emily Dawson, Jason Cole, and Linda Harper. Each carried their own weapon, hidden beneath loose clothing. They weren't taking chances. In the distance, 3 figures emerged from the shimmering heat haze. 2 were tall and angular, unmistakably Varnock. Their skin gleamed faintly under the sunlight, and their glowing eyes scanned the area with cold precision. Between them walked Zainara, her expression unreadable. She had insisted on accompanying the delegation, though no one on either side fully understood why. As the two groups approached each other, tension crackled in the air like static electricity. Ryan stepped forward first, his posture stiff but deliberate. Cale mirrored his movement, stopping just a few feet away. Neither spoke immediately. Instead, they studied one another, sizing up the enemy. Finally, Cale broke the silence. His voice came out mechanical, filtered through a translator device clipped to his chest. "We are here to discuss terms for your surrender." Ryan clenched his jaw but kept his tone steady. "Surrender isn't on the table. We're here to negotiate. Peace, not capitulation." Kyle tilted his head slightly as if puzzled by the concept. "Peace requires submission. Your species cannot coexist with ours without order." "Order imposed by force isn't peace," Ryan shot back. "It's oppression, and we've seen what happens when you try that." Behind him, Emily shifted, uncomfortably. Her fingers twitched near the pocket where she'd stashed a small EMP device. Jason fiddled with the straps of his backpack, ready to deploy the jammer if needed. Linda stood perfectly still, her hand resting casually on the holster of her pistol. Zinara watched the exchange carefully, her glowing eyes flickering between Ryan and Cale. She noticed subtle signs, the way Cale's shoulders tensed, the slight narrowing of his gaze. Something wasn't right. Then she saw it. Faint movements along the ridges surrounding the valley. Reinforcements. The Varnock hadn't come to negotiate. They'd come to ambush. Her heart raced, but she forced herself to remain calm. Turning slightly, she caught Ryan's eye and gave an almost imperceptible nod. It was a risk, signaling him like that, but she couldn't stand by and watch innocent lives destroyed unnecessarily. Humanity had surprised her, its resilience, its ingenuity, its refusal to give up despite overwhelming odds. Maybe there was more to these fragile creatures than she'd been led to believe. Ryan caught the signal and frowned. At first, he thought he'd imagined it, but then he noticed the same thing Zinara had, the glint of metal, the faint hum of machinery powering up. A trap. Anger surged through him, but he pushed it aside. Now wasn't the time to lose focus. "Looks like we're done talking," Ryan said loudly, stepping back toward his group. "Your tricks won't work on us." Cale's lips curled into something resembling a smirk. "You misunderstand. This is not a trick. It is inevitability." Before anyone could react, chaos erupted. Dozens of drones descended from the sky, firing energy blasts that kicked up clouds of sand. The humans scattered, diving for cover behind rocks and dunes. Emily activated the EMP device, sending out a pulse that disabled several drones instantly. Jason followed up with his signal jammer, creating a temporary blind spot in the Varnock's sensors. Linda popped up from behind a boulder, her rifle trained on the nearest drone. With practiced precision, she fired, hitting its core and sending it spiraling to the ground. "Keep moving," she shouted, reloading quickly. "Don't let them pin you down." Ryan ducked low, weaving through the battlefield as explosions rocked the earth around him. He spotted Zinara standing frozen, seemingly torn between loyalty to her kind and her growing doubts about their mission. Making a split-second decision, he sprinted toward her. "You don't want this," he said urgently, grabbing her arm. "Help us or get out of the way." For a moment, Zinara hesitated. Then, with a deep breath, she nodded. "I'll help, but you must trust me." Ryan didn't have time to question her motives. He gestured for her to follow as he rejoined the others. Together, they formed a makeshift retreat line using the EMP pulses and signal jammers to carve a path through the chaos. Meanwhile, Cale watched the scene unfold with mounting frustration. "Cease fire," he commanded, his voice sharp. "They are escaping." One of his subordinates turned to him, confusion evident in their glowing eyes. "Commander, shall we pursue?" "No," Cale replied after a pause. "Let them go. This setback will not deter us. Humanity's defiance only delays the inevitable." Back at the resistance camp, the survivors regrouped, battered but alive. Ryan paced in front of the group, his mind racing. Zinara sat apart from them, her presence met with wary glances. No one trusted her yet, but they couldn't deny the role she'd played in helping them escape. "We almost didn't make it," Ryan admitted, addressing the group, "but we did. And thanks to Zanara, we know what they're planning next." Emily raised an eyebrow. "So what? We just trust her now?" "I don't expect you to," Ryan said firmly. "But we need every advantage we can get. If she wants to help, we'd be fools to turn her away." Zanara stood slowly, drawing everyone's attention. "I understand your hesitation," she began, her voice soft but clear. "I represent a race that has caused you immeasurable pain. But I also see now that my people have made grave mistakes. We assumed dominance would bring peace, but all it has brought is destruction. I wish to help you end this conflict, not for the Varnock, but for both our species." There was a long silence as the humans processed her words. Finally, Jason spoke up. "If she's lying, we're dead anyway. But if she's telling the truth, maybe she's our best shot at winning." Ryan nodded. "Exactly, so here's the plan. Zainara says she can access their communication network. With her help, we can launch a coordinated attack on their key installations. Hit them hard enough and they'll have no choice but to pull back." The group exchanged uneasy glances but eventually agreed. Preparations began immediately. Weapons were checked, supplies gathered, and strategies refined. For the first time in weeks, hope flickered in their hearts, not just for survival but for victory. As night fell, Zanara found herself sitting alone by the fire, staring into the flames. Ryan joined her after a while, lowering himself onto a log nearby. "You took a big risk today," he said quietly. "Why?" Zanara looked at him, her glowing eyes reflecting the firelight. "Because I realized something. My people underestimated yours. They saw weakness where there was strength, division where there was unity. I wanted to believe the reports that humans were primitive, chaotic. But seeing how you fight, how you adapt, it changed my perspective." Ryan nodded slowly. "We're stubborn, that's for sure. Doesn't mean we always make the right choices, though." "No," Zanara agreed. "But neither do we. Perhaps in the end, that makes us more alike than different." They sat in silence for a while, the crackling of the fire filling the space between them. Tomorrow would bring uncertainty, danger, and possibly death. But for now, they allowed themselves a moment of quiet, a fragile truce forged in the shadow of war. The plan was risky, almost reckless. But Ryan Carter and his group didn't have the luxury of playing it safe anymore. With Zanara's help, they had mapped out the locations of 3 major Varnock installations: a communications hub, a weapons depot, and a power station that supplied energy to the mothership. Taking them down simultaneously would cripple the aliens' ability to coordinate their forces, and maybe even force them to retreat. "We hit fast and hard," Ryan explained to the group gathered around a makeshift table inside the cabin. The map spread across it was marked with red circles indicating the targets. "Each team has one job: get in, destroy the target, and get out. No heroics. If things go south, fall back immediately." Emily Dawson leaned over the map, her fingers tracing the route to the weapons depot. "What about backup? What if we run into trouble?" Ryan glanced at Zanara, who stood quietly in the corner. She nodded slightly before stepping forward. "I'll provide real-time updates through their network. If any reinforcements are sent your way, I'll warn you." Linda Harper crossed her arms, skepticism etched on her face. "And how do we know we can trust you? What's stopping you from feeding us false info?" Zanara met her gaze without flinching. "Because if I wanted you dead, you'd already be dead. I'm here because I believe this fight isn't just yours, it's mine too." Her words hung in the air, heavy but undeniable. Ryan broke the tension by clapping his hands together. "All right, enough talk, let's move." The night of the operation was pitch black, the moon obscured by thick clouds. Teams split up, each heading toward their assigned target. Ryan led, the strike on the communications hub, accompanied by Jason Cole and 2 others. They moved silently through the forest, avoiding open spaces where drones might spot them. The hum of alien technology grew louder as they approached the facility. a towering structure surrounded by a perimeter fence. "This is it," Ryan whispered, crouching behind a tree. He signaled for Jason to deploy the signal jammer. Within seconds, the faint glow of surveillance drones dimmed, their systems disrupted. "Go!" The team sprinted across the clearing, scaling the fence quickly. Inside, they encountered minimal resistance, just a handful of Varnock guards patrolling the area. Linda's team was responsible for taking them out quietly, using silenced weapons to avoid drawing attention. By the time Ryan reached the main building, the path was clear. Jason worked furiously at a control panel near the entrance, bypassing security measures with tools he'd scavenged. "Got it," he muttered, pulling the door open. The interior was a maze of corridors and rooms filled with blinking consoles and humming machinery. "Find the core," Ryan instructed. "We need to shut this place down completely." They fanned out, searching for the central hub. It wasn't long before they found it, a massive chamber dominated by a glowing sphere suspended in midair. Cables snaked outward from it, connecting to every part of the facility. "That's it," Jason said, pointing to the sphere. "If we overload it, the whole system will collapse." Ryan handed him a small explosive charge. "Do it. Fast." As Jason rigged the device, alarms suddenly blared throughout the building. Red lights flashed, bathing everything in an eerie crimson glow. "They know we're here," someone shouted. "Keep calm," Ryan barked. "Jason, finish up. Everyone else, cover the exits." Gunfire erupted outside as Linda's team engaged. Incoming reinforcements. Bullets ricocheted off metal walls and the sound of explosions echoed in the distance. Despite the chaos, Jason remained focused, his hands steady as he completed the setup. "Done," he yelled, scrambling to his feet. "Let's go!" The team bolted back the way they came, dodging blasts from pursuing Varnock soldiers. Just as they reached the exit, the charge detonated, sending a shockwave rippling through the facility. The ground shook violently, and the glowing sphere imploded, plunging the entire area into darkness. At the same time, Emily's team tackled the weapons depot. Armed with modified flamethrowers and incendiary devices, they set fire to rows of alien armament stored in underground bunkers. Thick smoke billowed into the sky, visible for miles. The heat was intense, forcing them to work quickly to avoid being overcome. "Hurry!" Emily shouted, tossing another fuel canister onto the flames. "We don't have much time." Her team obeyed, igniting stacks of crates until the entire bunker was engulfed. As they retreated, the roof collapsed inward, sealing off the inferno below. Meanwhile, Michael Hayes led the assault on the power station. His knowledge of the land proved invaluable as he guided his group through hidden trails to avoid detection. Once inside, they planted explosives along critical nodes, ensuring maximum damage when triggered. "This should do it," Michael said, pressing the detonator. A series of deafening booms rocked the station, cutting off the flow of energy to the mothership. Without warning, the skies above darkened as the massive vessel hovering overhead flickered and dimmed. Aboard the mothership, Kyle watched the screens displaying live feeds from the compromised facilities. His expression remained unreadable, though his clenched fists betrayed his frustration. "They're targeting our infrastructure," Zainara reported, standing beside him. Her voice carried a note of urgency. "If we don't act now, they'll bring us to our knees." Kale turned to her, his glowing eyes narrowing. "You've been aiding them." It wasn't a question. Zainara hesitated, then nodded. "Yes, because what we're doing is wrong. Humanity deserves a chance to survive." For a moment, Kale said nothing. Then, with deliberate calm, he activated the ship's intercom. "Attention all units, regroup at the primary extraction point. We are abandoning this planet." Zainara stared at him in disbelief. "You're retreating?" "No," Kale replied, coldly. "We are regrouping, and when we return, humanity will learn the true cost of defiance." Back on Earth, the survivors celebrated cautiously. Fires still burned in the distance, and the threat wasn't entirely gone. But for the first time in months, they dared to hope. Ryan stood atop a hill overlooking the smoldering ruins of the Varnock facilities, Zainara at his side. "You saved us." he said simply. Why? Zainara looked out at the horizon where the first rays of dawn began to break through the clouds. Because sometimes, even the strongest must admit when they're wrong. Maybe my people will learn that lesson someday. Ryan nodded, understanding her meaning. For now, the war was paused, but both knew it wasn't over. The aftermath of the battle was a mix of relief and exhaustion. The survivors gathered at Ryan Carter's cabin, sharing stories around a large bonfire. Some laughed, others cried, but all felt the weight of what they'd accomplished, and the uncertainty of what lay ahead. The Varnock had retreated, but no one believed it was permanent. Kale's final message made that clear. Humanity would face them again. And next time, the aliens wouldn't underestimate them. Zainara stayed with the group, her presence still met with cautious glances. She didn't blame them for their distrust. After everything the Varnock had done, it would take more than words to earn forgiveness. But she worked tirelessly to prove herself, helping repair damaged equipment, offering insight into alien technology, and even teaching Jason how to modify scavenged parts to create better defenses. One evening, as the fire crackled softly, Ryan approached Zainara where she sat apart from the others. He handed her a cup of coffee, black the way she liked it. "You've done good," he said simply. "Not just today, but since you joined us." She accepted the cup, her glowing eyes meeting his. "I haven't done enough." "Not yet." Ryan shook his head. "You've already done more than most people thought possible. You turned against your own kind for us. That takes courage." Zainara looked down at the coffee, her expression thoughtful. "Courage isn't why I did it. I saw what my people were doing and I knew it was wrong. Sometimes doing the right thing means standing alone." Ryan nodded slowly. "Well, you're not alone anymore. Not if you don't want to be." Her lips curved into the faintest hint of a smile. It wasn't much, but it was progress. As weeks passed, life began to return to a semblance of normalcy, or as close to normal as it could get after an alien invasion. People started rebuilding homes, planting crops, and repairing roads. The scars left by the Varnock were deep, but humanity's resilience shone brighter. Michael Hayes offered his farmland as a central hub for the growing resistance network. Supplies flowed in from neighboring communities and new recruits arrived daily, eager to contribute to the cause. Jason Cole became something of a local hero. His inventions had proven invaluable during the fight, and now he spent hours tinkering in a makeshift workshop, creating tools and gadgets designed to counter future threats. Emily Dawson continued modifying vehicles, turning old trucks and tractors into mobile fortresses equipped with weapons and shields. Linda Harper trained volunteers in combat tactics, ensuring everyone was prepared for whatever came next. Sarah Carter, meanwhile, focused on nurturing hope. She organized classes for children, teaching them basic skills like reading, math, and gardening. "They're the future," she told anyone who asked why she devoted so much time to the kids. "If we lose sight of that, then we've already lost." Even Zainara found her place among the group. Her knowledge of Varnock technology allowed them to develop countermeasures, and her understanding of their psychology gave them an edge in planning strategies. Slowly but surely the humans began to trust her, not fully perhaps, but enough to work alongside her without hesitation. Despite the progress, tensions remained high. Reports trickled in about increased activity aboard the Varnock mothership, which still loomed ominously in orbit. Drones patrolled the skies more frequently, scanning for signs of human resistance. Ryan knew it was only a matter of time before Kale launched another assault. When that happened, they needed to be ready. "We can't wait for them to come to us," Ryan said during a strategy meeting. "We need to take the fight to them." The room fell silent. Everyone knew what he meant infiltrating the mothership itself. It was a dangerous plan bordering on suicidal, but it might be the only way to end the threat once and for all. "I'll go," Zainara volunteered immediately. "I know the ship's layout. Without me, you won't stand a chance." Ryan studied her for a moment, then nodded. "All right, but you're not going alone. I'm coming with you." "No," Zainara said firmly. "You're needed here, If something happens to you, the resistance falls apart. Send someone else, someone expendable. Her words stung, but Ryan understood her logic. Finally, he agreed to let Jason accompany her instead. Just make sure you both come back, he added gruffly. The infiltration mission took place under the cover of darkness. Zinara and Jason slipped through the forest, avoiding patrols until they reached the edge of a barren wasteland, created by the Varnok's earlier attacks. The ground was scorched and cracked, devoid of life. Hovering above it was the massive mothership, its underside lined with pulsating lights. Zinara activated a stolen device that masked their heat signatures, allowing them to approach undetected. They climbed aboard using a maintenance hatch she'd identified during her time on the ship. Inside, the corridors were eerily quiet, illuminated by soft blue light. "This way," Zinara whispered, leading Jason deeper into the vessel. Their goal was the core reactor, a massive energy source powering the entire ship. Destroying it would disable the mothership, forcing the Varnok to retreat permanently. They encountered little resistance at first, moving swiftly through empty halls. But as they neared the reactor chamber, alarms blared and red warning lights flashed. "They know we're here," Zinara muttered, pulling out a small EMP device. Jason clutched the explosive charge tightly, his hands trembling. "Let's just get this over with." Reaching the core, they found it guarded by a squad of Varnok soldiers. Zinara stepped forward, raising her hands in surrender. "Stand down," she commanded in their language. "This is over." For a moment the guards hesitated, confused by her presence. Then Kyle appeared, his glowing eyes blazing with fury. "Traitor!" he spat, raising his weapon. Before he could fire, Zinara activated the EMP device, disabling the soldiers' weapons. Seizing the opportunity, Jason darted past them and planted the explosive near the core. "Done!" he shouted, sprinting back toward Zinara. "Run!" she yelled, grabbing his arm and dragging him toward the exit. Behind them, the charge detonated, sending a shockwave rippling through the ship. Lights flickered, walls buckled, and gravity fluctuated wildly. They barely made it outside before the mothership began descending uncontrollably. As it crashed into the wasteland below, a deafening roar filled the air, followed by an explosion, so bright it lit up the night sky. Back at the cabin, the survivors watched the spectacle in stunned silence. When Zinara and Jason stumbled into view, covered in dust and exhausted but alive, cheers erupted. For the first time in months, the threat truly felt over. In the days that followed, people worked together to rebuild their world. Crops sprouted, anew towns rose from ruins, and laughter returned to gatherings around campfires. Zinara chose to stay, becoming a bridge between two species that had once been enemies. Together they forged a fragile peace, built on mutual respect and shared hardship. As Ryan stood on the porch of his cabin, watching the sunrise paint the horizon gold, he felt a sense of quiet pride. Humanity hadn't just survived. It had triumphed. And though challenges undoubtedly lay ahead, he knew they would face them together.